I have a plan, I said quietly, forcing as much confidence into my voice as I could. I was sitting at the dinner table with my family, the same place where I usually stayed silent. My sister, Brittany, leaned back in her chair and suddenly burst into laughter. It was a loud, sharp sound that made people at the nearby tables in the restaurant turn around to look at us. You? A plan? She mocked, her eyes crinkling with mean spirit. Alyssa, you can't even keep your life together. You're barely getting by at that dead-end office job. My chest tightened as I looked down at my plate. My parents went completely silent, looking embarrassed for me, but they didn't speak up to defend me. They never did. To them, Brittany was the successful one with the high-paying corporate job and the fancy apartment. I was just the daughter who struggled to pay rent. Then my phone started ringing. It was an unknown number from a city area code. Brittany smirked and gestured toward the device. Go ahead, answer it, she said. Maybe it's another failure calling to tell you that you messed up again. I picked it up, my hand shaking slightly as I pressed the phone to my ear. Is this Alyssa Grant? A deep, professional voice asked on the other end. I took a steady breath and replied, Yes, this is she. The voice continued, sounding very impressed. This is the executive office from the Miller Group. We've finished reviewing your technology proposal and your financial projections. We are ready to move forward with your proposal for the partnership. It's one of the most innovative ideas we've seen in years. Brittany's laughter cut off mid-breath. She watched my face closely, trying to figure out what was happening. I kept my tone very calm and professional, not letting any of the excitement show in my voice. That sounds excellent, I said. Please send the official documents to my secure email address. I'll review them tonight. The person on the phone thanked me and said they would be in touch for a formal meeting the following morning. I hung up the phone and placed it face down on the table. Brittany was frowning now, her face full of confusion instead of mockery. What deal? What proposal are you talking about? She demanded. I just picked up my fork and took a bite of my salad without explaining anything to her. For the first time in years, she actually had no comeback. When we got back home, Brittany didn't let it go. She followed me into the kitchen and brushed the whole thing off as a scam. It was probably a telemarketer, Alyssa. Don't act like you've suddenly become some big businesswoman overnight, she said, laughing again. But her laugh sounded a little more forced this time. Her words hit old scars that I had carried for years. I remembered all the times she had dismissed me, the times she overlooked my hard work, and how she always underestimated my intelligence. I felt the sting of those memories, but I didn't let them break me. This time, I wasn't going to defend myself or try to explain why she was wrong. I didn't need her approval anymore. I just walked past her and went toward my room, thinking to myself, you will definitely regret that laugh. She didn't know that I had been spending every single night for the past year working until 3 a.m. She thought I was just watching television in my room, but I was building a future she couldn't even imagine. I went inside and locked my door, finally feeling like I was in control of my own story. Inside my small apartment, I opened my laptop. The screen glowed, illuminating the work I had been hiding from everyone. I pulled up my dashboards, which were filled with complex financial projections, lines of advanced code, and draft contracts. I wasn't lost or struggling like Brittany thought. I had been building a specialized software platform in total silence. I knew that if I told anyone in my family, they would just discourage me or tell me I was wasting my time. The software was designed to help independent creators manage their supply chains more efficiently. It was something the market desperately needed, and I had spent months perfecting the back-end logic. I looked at the numbers on the screen. If the Miller Group followed through with their offer, my life would change in an instant. I wasn't just a girl with a plan. I was a founder with a product that was about to be worth millions. I felt a surge of energy as I began reviewing the documents they had just sent over. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. I was prepared for the meeting tomorrow, and I knew that no amount of Brittany's bullying could stop what was coming next. The next morning, I arrived at a massive glass-walled office building downtown. This was the headquarters of a major venture capital firm. I was met by Lucas, the senior partner I had been communicating with. He was a sharp man who didn't waste time. Alyssa, your work is impeccable, he said as we sat in a private conference room. We want to offer you a 50% stake in a new company we are forming to house this technology. You will be the co-founder and lead architect. I looked at the contract. It wasn't just a partnership. It was a total validation of everything I had sacrificed. Lucas explained that he had seen hundreds of pitches, but mine was the only one that actually solved the core problems of the industry. We've already scouted a few potential employees for the marketing side, he mentioned. I smiled to myself, thinking about how Brittany worked in marketing. She had no idea that the failure she lived with was about to become the person who decided the future of her entire field. I signed the documents with a steady hand. Lucas shook my hand and welcomed me to the team. No more hiding, Alyssa, he said. It's time for the world to see what you've built. While I was finalizing the deal, Brittany was at her own office. She worked as a senior manager at a firm that was actually a competitor to the Miller Group's new project. She was having a stressful day, dealing with a series of clients who were unhappy with their current software. She was venting to her co-workers in the break room. My sister is so delusional, she told them, sipping her coffee. She actually tried to act like she was closing some big business deal at dinner last night.
Can you imagine?
Alyssa, of all people. Her co-workers laughed, but one of them looked a bit thoughtful. Wait, Grant? Is that her last name? I heard a rumor that the Miller Group just signed a massive new tech lead named Alyssa Grant. Brittany froze for a second, then shook her head violently. No way. That has to be a different person. My sister works in a library annex and forgets to pay her phone bill half the time. There is no world where she is a tech lead. She forced another laugh, but the seed of doubt was planted. She spent the rest of her lunch break searching the internet for news, but I had kept the details under a strict embargo until the official launch. The following Saturday was our monthly family lunch. Usually, this was my least favorite day, as it was just 2 hours of Brittany bragging about her sales targets and our parents nodding along. Today, the atmosphere felt different. Brittany was unusually quiet, her eyes darting to me every few minutes. My mom noticed. Is everything okay, Brittany? You seem distracted, she said. Brittany cleared her throat and looked at me. Alyssa, I wanted to ask, what was that call really about the other night? I saw a news snippet about a new startup and the name sounded familiar. I didn't look up from my soup. It was just business, Brittany, I said. My father let out a small huff. Business? Alyssa, we've told you before, you shouldn't get caught up in those get-rich-quick schemes. You need to focus on your stable job. Brittany's confidence seemed to return as my father spoke. Exactly. I'm worried you're getting scammed by some consultancy firm. I know people in the industry, and nobody has heard of you. I just smiled a little bit, thinking about the non-disclosure agreement I had signed. The industry is a big place, Brittany. Sometimes the most important things happen where you aren't looking. You're being so mysterious for no reason, Brittany snapped, her frustration showing. It's honestly embarrassing. If you actually had something real, you'd be able to explain it. But you can't, because it's all in your head. I looked at her and saw the same girl who used to hide my homework so I would get in trouble. She hadn't changed at all. She still needed to feel superior by making me feel small. I don't need to explain anything to you, I said firmly. The rest of the meal was tense. My parents tried to change the subject to the weather and my cousin's upcoming wedding, but Brittany kept staring at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. I could tell it was eating her alive. She was used to being the only one with secrets and power in the family. Now that I had something of my own, she felt her grip on the family hierarchy slipping. When it was time to leave, she didn't give me her usual patronizing hug. She just waved and walked to her car, her heels clicking aggressively on the pavement. I felt a sense of peace as I drove home. The reveal was only a few days away. The official announcement happened on a Tuesday. I woke up to hundreds of notifications on my phone. The Miller Group had released a press statement along with a photo of me and Lucas in the boardroom. The headline was everywhere. Miller Group launches revolutionized supply chain platform with co-founder Alyssa Grant. My inbox was flooded with messages from old classmates, former bosses, and people I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't check any of them. I just sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the sun come up. Around noon, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice sounded breathless, and completely shocked. Alyssa, have you seen the news? Your father and I are staring at a picture of you in the business journal. Is this the plan you were talking about? I could hear my father in the background, his voice filled with a mix of pride and confusion. I told her she was smart, he shouted. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Now that I was a success, he suddenly remembered my intelligence. I talked to them for a few minutes, keeping it brief. I knew the person who would be the most affected hadn't called yet. Brittany's call came about an hour later. She didn't sound happy or proud. She sounded terrified. Alyssa? Why is your name on my company's internal memo? She whispered. My boss just called an emergency meeting. He said a new competitor is going to put us out of business within 6 months because their tech is too advanced. He showed us the founder's photo. It was you. I could hear her pacing her office, her breathing heavy. I'm the co-founder, Brittany, I said, my voice steady. I told you I had a plan. There was a long silence on the other end. I could imagine her face. The shock, the realization that the person she had spent a lifetime mocking was now the person who held the power over her career. But how? She asked. You were just you. I didn't answer that. I didn't need to. I have to go, Brittany. I have a board meeting to lead. I hung up before she could say anything else. It wasn't about revenge, but I won't lie and say it didn't feel good to finally be heard. The laughter had finally stopped, and in its place was a silence that spoke volumes. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I moved out of my small apartment and into a beautiful office suite. I was hiring staff, meeting with investors, and overseeing the final rollout of the software. I was no longer the girl who struggled to pay rent. I was an executive making decisions that affected hundreds of people. My parents called me every day, suddenly very interested in my life and my work. They even asked if I could help Brittany, whose firm was already starting to feel the pressure of our success. She's your sister, Alyssa, my mom said over the phone. She's really struggling. Her boss is blaming her team for not seeing this coming. I felt a twinge of guilt, but I pushed it aside. Brittany hadn't seen it coming because she was too busy looking down at me. She had been so focused on my failures that she missed the fact that I was actually growing. I told my mother that I couldn't interfere with the market, but that Brittany was talented and would surely find a way to adapt. I knew that sounds cold, but I needed to set boundaries. For years, my needs were secondary to Brittany's ego. That era was over. I was invited to speak at a major tech conference. It was a huge honor, and I spent days preparing my keynote. I wanted to talk about the power of building in silence and why underestimating people is a fatal business mistake. When I walked onto the stage, the room was packed. I looked out at the audience and saw thousands of people waiting to hear what I had to say. For a moment, I felt a flash of the old Alyssa, the one who wanted to hide in the back of the library. But then I remembered the laughter at the dinner table. I gave the speech of my life. I didn't name names, but I talked about the sisters and brothers of the world who are told they aren't enough. I saw people nodding, some even with tears in their eyes. After I finished, there was a standing ovation. As I walked off the stage, I saw a familiar face in the crowd.
It was Brittany.
She was standing near the exit, looking small and out of place in a room full of people who were celebrating me. Our eyes met for a second, and she quickly looked away. She hadn't come to congratulate me. She had come to see if the rumors were true. After the conference, Lucas approached me with a file. We need to talk about the acquisition strategy, he said. There's a smaller marketing firm that's struggling. They have some good assets, but their leadership is failing. I think we should buy them out and restructure them. I opened the file and froze. It was Brittany's firm. The irony was almost too much to handle. My company was in a position to literally buy the company that employed my sister. Is there a problem? Lucas asked, noticing my expression. I closed the file and took a breath. No problem. It's a smart move. Let's proceed with the due diligence. I didn't tell him my sister worked there. I wanted the process to be purely professional. I knew that if the deal went through, I would eventually have to face her in a corporate setting. The thought made my heart race, but not with fear. I felt a strange sense of destiny. I hadn't planned for it to go this far, but I wasn't going to stop it. I was a businesswoman now, and I had to do what was best for the company. Brittany would have to find her own way through the fallout. The due diligence process revealed that Brittany's department was the one most responsible for the firm's decline. They had been arrogant and had ignored the emerging tech trends, the very trends I had been building my platform on. I sat in a meeting with the acquisition team, looking at the performance reviews of the senior managers. Brittany's name was at the top. Her reviews were mixed. She was called highly driven but difficult to work with and dismissive of new ideas. It was like reading a description of our childhood. She hadn't just been a bully to me. She had been a bully to her subordinates and her peers. Her ego had blinded her to the reality of the changing market. I realized then that my success wasn't just luck. It was the result of being the opposite of her. I had listened, I had learned, and I had stayed humble. I authorized the buyout. The transition would take place in 2 weeks. I would be the one to sign the final papers, and I would be the one to announce the new management structure to the staff. I wondered if Brittany was already looking for a new job. The day of the merger, I arrived at the other firm's headquarters. It was a sleek building, but the atmosphere inside was heavy with anxiety. People knew that a buyout usually meant layoffs. I walked into the main boardroom, where the senior staff was gathered. I saw Brittany sitting near the end of the long table. She looked pale, her hands gripped tightly around a notebook. She didn't look at me as I took the seat at the head of the table. I began the meeting by explaining the new vision for the combined company. I talked about efficiency, transparency, and the importance of every team member's contribution. Then I turned to the list of names. I had to announce who would be staying and who would be let go. I felt the weight of the room's attention. I looked directly at Brittany. I saw her name on the list of people to be terminated. The acquisition team had determined her role was redundant and her management style was toxic to the new culture we were building. My hand hovered over the paper. Next to her name, I saw Lucas's signature. She was already gone. We will be making some difficult changes in the marketing department, I said, my voice not wavering. Several roles will be phased out to make room for a new, tech-integrated approach. I didn't say her name out loud in the meeting, but she knew. I saw her shoulders slump, and she looked down at the table. After the meeting was over, the room cleared quickly as people rushed to check their emails for their status updates. Brittany stayed in her chair. I stayed too. I waited until the room was empty before I spoke. Brittany, I said quietly. She looked up, and for the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. You bought my company just to fire me. I shook my head. I didn't buy the company to fire you, Brittany. I bought it because it was a good business move. And the decision to let you go wasn't mine alone. It was based on your performance and the feedback from your own team.
She looked shocked by that.
My team? I gave them everything. I pushed them to be the best. I looked at her sadly. You pushed them away, Brittany. Just like you pushed me. She stood up, her face red with a mix of anger and shame. You don't know anything about management. You've been a CEO for 5 minutes. You're just enjoying this because I laughed at you that night. I stood my ground. I'm not enjoying this. It's actually very painful to see my sister in this position. But I can't let my personal feelings put my company at risk. You weren't a good leader here, Brittany. You were a bully. And bullies don't last in the new world I'm building. She grabbed her bag and walked toward the door, but she stopped with her hand on the handle. I hate you, she said, her voice trembling. I hate that you've done this. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She walked out, and I sat back down in the quiet boardroom. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. The cycle was finally broken. I had stopped being the victim, and she had stopped being the star. I looked at the legal documents on the table. My name, Alyssa Grant, was signed in bold at the bottom. I was the co-founder of a company that now owned her past. It was time to look toward the future. The news of the buyout and the subsequent layoffs hit the industry journals the next day. Brittany's name was mentioned as one of the high-level exits. My parents called me, sounding panicked. Alyssa, how could you let them fire your sister? My father demanded. We thought you were going to help her. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, but they didn't want to hear about market efficiency or toxic management. To them, I was being the mean sister now. It was a strange reversal. For years, they had ignored Brittany's behavior toward me, but now that the tables were turned, I was the villain. I realized that I couldn't win with them. Their loyalty was to the status quo, even if the status quo was broken. I told them that I loved them, but that I wouldn't be bullied into making bad business decisions. I hung up the phone and felt a new sense of strength. I was finally standing up to everyone, not just Brittany, but my parents too. I was my own person now, and my value wasn't determined by their approval. A month later, I was at a charity gala for young entrepreneurs. I was standing near the bar when I saw a woman I didn't recognize at first. She was wearing a simple dress and had her hair pulled back. It was Brittany. She wasn't an executive anymore. She was working as a volunteer coordinator for the event. She saw me and hesitated, then walked over. I expected her to scream or make a scene, but she looked tired. "I wanted to apologize," she said, her voice low so nobody else could hear. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since I lost my job. I realized that I really was a jerk to everyone. I thought my title made me better than people, and I forgot that titles can be taken away." I was stunned. I hadn't expected an apology in a million years. "I appreciate that, Brittany," I said. "It takes a lot of courage to admit that." She nodded and looked out at the crowded room. "I'm starting over. A small firm hired me as a junior associate. No management, just work. I'm learning a lot. And I'm proud of you, Alyssa. I mean it." We stood there for a moment in silence. The tension that had defined our entire lives seemed to evaporate. She wasn't the star, and I wasn't the shadow. We were just two sisters at a party. "Do you want to grab coffee sometime?" I asked. No business talk. Just coffee. Brittany smiled, a real smile that didn't have any mockery in it. "I'd like that. I'd like that a lot." As I walked away, I felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. My plan hadn't just made me rich and successful. It had finally forced my sister to see me as an equal. It had stripped away the layers of ego and competition and left us with the truth. I realized that the call that changed everything wasn't just the one from the Miller Group. It was the call to be honest with myself and to demand the respect I deserved. I looked back at Brittany one last time, and she waved. I waved back. The plan was finally complete, and the results were better than I could have ever imagined. Our first coffee meeting was awkward, but honest. We sat in a small cafe far away from the corporate district. Brittany told me about her new job. She was doing basic research and helping with client presentations. "It's humbling," she admitted, stirring her sugar. "But I actually feel less stressed. I don't have to pretend I'm perfect all the time." I shared some of the stresses of being a CEO, the constant pressure to perform, and the loneliness of making big decisions. For the first time, we were actually listening to each other. I told her about the nights I spent crying in my apartment because I was afraid I would fail. She told me about the pressure she felt from our parents to always be the best. We realized that we had both been trapped in roles that were designed for us by other people. My plan hadn't just been about business. It was about escaping that trap. By the end of the hour, we weren't just sisters. We were starting to become friends. It was a slow process, but it was real. I left the cafe feeling a sense of hope I hadn't felt since the day I signed my first contract. My company continued to flourish. We expanded into international markets and launched a series of new tools for small businesses. I was featured on the cover of a major business magazine, but this time, I didn't feel the need to show it to my parents or Brittany. My sense of worth was internal now. I knew what I had accomplished, and I didn't need a glossy page to prove it. I invited my parents to visit the office. I wanted them to see the culture I had built, a place where people were respected and ideas were valued. They were impressed, but more than that, they seemed to finally understand that I was a professional. My father even apologized for his earlier comments. "I didn't see your potential, Alyssa," he said, looking at the bustling office floor. "I was looking for something else, and I missed what was right in front of me." I thanked him and gave him a tour. It was a quiet victory, but it was enough. I had earned their respect not by yelling, but by doing. My little plan had become a reality that even they couldn't ignore. Brittany eventually worked her way back up to a manager position at her new firm. She was different this time, more collaborative, more patient, and much more successful because of it. Her team actually liked her. One day, she called me to ask for my advice on a difficult client. I wanted to get your perspective, Alyssa. You always had a way of seeing the underlying logic that I missed. I spent an hour on the phone with her, walking through the problem. It felt good to be a mentor to her. We had found a balance where we could support each other without competing. My parents were thrilled to see us getting along. They stopped comparing us and started celebrating our different paths. I realized that my success had created a space for everyone in the family to be themselves. We were no longer defined by a hierarchy of success and failure. We were just a family of individuals who each had our own plans. The laughter had truly stopped, replaced by genuine conversation. A year after the buyout, I was standing on the balcony of my new home, looking out over the city. I thought back to the night at the restaurant when Brittany had laughed at me. It felt like a lifetime ago. I thought about the girl who was so afraid to speak up, who felt like she was a failure just because she didn't fit into a specific mold. I wanted to tell her that it was all going to be okay. I pulled out my phone and looked at my call history. It was full of people who valued my opinion and my leadership. But the most important call was the one I made to myself, the decision to stop believing the lies and to start building my own truth. I had turned a moment of humiliation into a legacy of empowerment. I wasn't just Alyssa Grant, the librarian, and I wasn't just Alyssa Grant, the CEO. I was Alyssa Grant, the woman who had a plan and the courage to follow it. I took a deep breath of the cool night air and smiled. The world was full of possibilities, and I was ready for whatever came next. Today, I'm sitting in my office, preparing for a new product launch. I have a team of brilliant people who are excited about the work we're doing. I still have a notebook where I write down my ideas, just like I did when I was hiding in the library. But now, those ideas don't have to stay hidden. I share them with the world, and the world listens. Brittany and I are closer than ever. We're even talking about collaborating on a project for independent creators. She brings the marketing expertise, and I bring the technology. It's a perfect partnership. I realize now that my sister's laughter wasn't an obstacle. It was a catalyst. It pushed me to find a strength I didn't know I had. I am grateful for that night, and I am grateful for everything that followed. I look at my phone as it rings. It's an unknown number. I answer it with a smile. This is Alyssa Grant. How can I help you? The future is calling, and this time, I'm the one who's laughing, not at anyone else, but with joy for the life I've built.